history and so much to offer. So it's like, you know, if you already have the media bashing the city that they're in, and it's almost like, you know, the community tries with the Baltimore ceasefire movement and the Baltimore Peace Challenge movement, but at the end of the day, it's like, what kind of support is needed? What can the community really do to try to, you know, at least rebrand enough where people can start traveling there? I mean, that's a lot of their economy. Even the restaurant bubble has kind of imploded a little bit. So what can really be done? Because that's honestly the saddest part to me. It's like, you know, other than these bad things happening in Baltimore, there are so many beautiful things about it. And it's almost like Chicago has just as bad, if not worse, things going on, but it's kind of like they would rather protect their city.
Well, let's do this. I'm going to bring a caller in and let's see what the caller's thoughts are. Caller, you're live with Ambezi and the Chief and Reverend Phillips.
Oh, well, good evening. Hi. I just wanted to remark on some of the items that Dr. Powers made. And he was talking about excitement about, you know, going out and doing different things. And I thought, I said, most people have lost the excitement of life, you know. And we're talking about the police department, specifically Baltimore Police Department in Chicago, major cities, but it's hitting everywhere, the fact that there is no respect as for authority as there once was. Now, and I look at it a broader picture coming from the top, coming from the White House, coming from the biases that are coming out of the White House.
Wow.
Years ago when we were going through the civil rights movement, and there was the governor was ordered the police officers to spray water on the civil rights leaders, you know, from the water pumps. And the police officers were enjoying it, but they were enjoying it because it looked funny, you know, it looked like a comic, it's something they could hardly believe, but they were also following the direction of their leader. The more they followed the direction of their leader, the more they were hailed for doing right. So this is somewhat of what's happening now. Our leader has certain biases against people of color, people who are in high positions. He's so stumped on trying to remove whatever our previous president's initiatives was. For instance, Obama had an initiative to redress systematic biases in America's urban police forces. All right, so now we have this leader, and I'm talking about the root of it all, this leader who is saying, forget them, do what I say. And what I say is that I have the power, and I'm rolling back all the programs that could enforce equal rights and justice under the law. He's actually saying that I'm weakening the voting reforms that discriminate against African Americans, Latinos, the poor, etc., and I'm handling this race in my own way. So now we have under him the Department of Justice, who is not sure which way to go because they have a moral value right on what they know is right, and following this biased leader's racism to the point where that's filtered down to the police forces, not just Baltimore, but to the police forces nationwide. Well, we're going to follow what this charismatic leader is telling us and is overwhelming us with his dissatisfaction. He's actually abandoning civil rights enforcement. So when Ambezi spoke about the young children taking the sneakers and so forth from the van or the truck that was there, they acted out on what they thought was right, something that would help them. Okay, sure. And Ambezi was characterizing the priorities of the police department to say, well, isn't murder and so forth, isn't that a bigger priority than running after kids trying to take the sneakers who really need them? And of course, we see that in that manner, but the people who are following our charismatic leader say that's not what I'm getting paid for. I'm getting paid to follow what this person believes in. Yep. And so that's filtered down. It's filtered down that we have, you say that being tainted by bad police officers. There's no such thing as a bad police officer. Okay, it's a bad person who happens to be a police officer, who happens to be in authority to make a distinction and weaken our local people. So that higher office is actually weakening our local police department. If that police department was following from a leader as we have had in the past, from our previous president, a lot of this was changing. It was going somewhere. It was no longer showing outward discrimination against people of color, against women, against the young, against working people. So he's put us in a position, this person we have now, that we're floating because eventually it's expected for us to sink. And so that's causing a lot of discrimination among the classes, a lot of discrimination among our own people, and it's not just, say, because of color, but it's also happening with the products, discrimination in products, discrimination in the books. Send those books, those torn up books, to the F-rated schools. They're not going to do any better. They have no one standing there to help them. So the people who say, should I go to the police and tell them what I see? No, I'm going to be like the three monkeys, hear none, see none, and speak no. Right. I'm just going to stay out of it because I don't have any support coming from the top. This says, help me out. So they said, okay, we'll put you into some sort of standing where no one will ever know. You'll be in a secret area. No one will be able to find you. But who wants to be put into that position? Because They're still saying, out there, if I'm stuck in this hole where they want me, where I can no longer speak what I value, then they're out there. There are people who are being torn down, disrupted, and that leads to the police officers. That leads to the people who have no authority, who don't choose to listen to the police officers. So we're fighting a battle. We're fighting a battle. It's not a battle that just started. It didn't just start in Baltimore. It started years ago, prior, after Christ, before Christ. It's been going on for years in a different way. It's just continuing, and it's not changing. It's just reappearing in different forms.
Well, let me ask you this, and I assume you're calling from Florida.
Yes, I am.
Okay, and so I guess my I'm going to play devil's advocate for a minute, and I certainly hear you loud and clear about the direction from the top. And in most agencies, you're right. The direction of that agency, I don't care whether you're in Florida, Alaska, Missouri Highway Patrol, it starts from the top. And so my question is, compartmentalizing that, what is it that is contributing to the climate in the community where we have 59 shootings in 3 days and 6 homicides? And, I certainly understand the concern the community has in some of the cases they've seen throughout the country. And I know those are being addressed not to everyone's satisfaction. But my point is, what type of housekeeping things can be done so that a 16-year-old doesn't feel like it's okay for me to go out and put a gun in somebody's face, pull the trigger, take his chain, and then I'm going to go to a party? How can we change that? What can be done internally so that every week on CNN or every week on MSNBC, we're not looking at these incredible numbers? And also, and let me put this in there, I've talked to some folks from Chicago, and the first thing that some people, not all, but some will say, oh, well, that's not on this side of town. That's in this little area here. So it's almost like it's okay as long as it's contained in this little area. And once it spills out of there, then, yeah, we'll deal with it. How do we change that?
I take that back to the root. Okay, so you're talking about this shooter who now shoots someone and goes to a party, and what can we do about that? We're just putting a Band-Aid on it. Okay, that's temporarily stopping that individual. putting a Band-Aid. And there's so many different forces of Band-Aid. Oh, community relations, go to the schools and talk to the kids and work with them in the community centers. Those are Band-Aids. We have to go back to the root where it's coming from, where it's making these types of things happen throughout. And it says, even when people go to the polls to vote, the big machine that we talked, if you go years back when you're in school in political science, the big machine are the voters. But it's not really us voting. It's the Electoral College that's voting any way they want. So when we found that out, many people was brought to their attention recently, says, well, then why go to the polls? These people are the ones who are controlling the country, the electoral votes machine. I put my vote in for him, and you went over there and picked the other him, something like that. So it's where we do. What are we doing now? Voting is going out now for different offices, different judges, governors, etc., mayors in some city. But the right person gets voted in, but the right person doesn't have the ammunition to make change in the higher office. Right now, Congress is battling against themselves, trying to get legislative passed that the higher office won't sign. So that's where the change has to come. The change has to come to remove those obstacles, so that what you're doing with that Band-Aid, in order to take that Band-Aid off, to make that change first, you have to make the change in the higher office first, so that you can do something to resolve and to solve some issues at the other level. And we're going to keep fighting and to keep these Band-Aids, keep going out and restoring Band-Aids, and we're going to keep pushing. And this has been going, like I said, advocates have been doing this for years. Community leaders have been out there for years. Police departments, look at the New York City Police Department, they put out this big guide to make change. They have changed. I've watched them change. I've been a part of living with them make the change. And they're working hard. They're political officers who are saying, and even the governor, we're fighting against the people at the top. We have our own small communal area of New York State that we're fighting to maintain so that this other federal forces don't come in. And that's where Baltimore is. Baltimore is fighting hard, but they don't have enough strong political leaders that say, I'm coming out of the closet and I'm going to fight harder. In Florida, you mentioned I'm from Florida. In Florida, our situation is the gun control. And we're trying to get people in office who are against this gun situation, to the point that it did hit home. It hit home with our governor, Rick Scott. He's not talking about how much it hit home, but he's now trying to put himself in a position where he can speak up and say, yes, I'm totally against the gun law. So rather than him stand to fight, he's going to run. He says, I'm getting out of here. He said, I'm going to go and try to be a federal senator, a U.S. senator. I'm getting out of here. I realize I can't do anything because I have someone in a higher place who once lived in this state, who is beginning to control my office. So there's just like they say that there's Medicaid in different states, and the Medicaid runs its own way in different states. This is the same thing that's happening in Baltimore, which is almost a state of its own with its big battle. As soon as the waters begin to calm in Baltimore, this has been going on in Baltimore for several years, and as soon as the waters begin to calm, then comes in another political office that makes the change. One of the biggest things you can do is wipe everything out, as Mayor Pugh has started, wipe everything out and start from the beginning. But there's always that one bad core that remains.
That's right.
And that's what happens.
Wow. Well, as always, we always appreciate your calls.
Yes.
And you always leave us something to think about. And so, and we certainly hope that you will call us every week with such inspiration. So, Reverend Phillips, based on what you heard, and I know we had started talking a little bit about the attitude of the legislators, the attitude of the community, and so forth. do you see the same types of apathy and other things that